Hey, it's Natalie Callback. I'm here for Creative Jumpstart 2020, and I'm super excited to have Iris Fritschi-Cussens back this year again. I'm so sorry. And it was funny because I was just talking with her a second ago on how to pronounce her name, and then of course you're like so focused, but I think I did not too bad. So I'm super happy. Iris was part of Creative Jumpstart 2019, and I'm super thrilled that I've discovered her back then and that she joined us again this year. She did an amazing video again, and you're up for a treat. But I want her to introduce herself to you and tell us a little bit about her. Hi, Iris.
Hi. Thanks for having me again. It's really exciting, and thanks for pronouncing my last name so excellently.
Trying.
Yeah.
So, Iris, you're in London, right?
Yeah, I am. Yes, I'm originally from Holland, but I live in London, which is great. Like, it's a great place for like inspiration, for education, just like that kind of thing. It's great.
So, tell us a little bit about like how you came to art and what you usually do. We see a little bit of your beautiful work in the background, but so for those of you who don't know her yet.
Yeah, so I'm a mixed media artist, and I do a lot of my work in art journals, like the ones there. The reason I do art, is to kind of to discover myself and to express myself. So those are my kind of main two. When I sit down to do art, that's the reason I'm doing it. It isn't to make something specific, or it isn't to like, I don't know, like, because I have a picture in my mind. It's not like that. It's much more about, like, I go to therapy several times a week. I am very busy in this part of my life trying to kind of figure things out, trying to understand who I am, what drives me, why am I the person that I am, why do I struggle with the things that I struggle with. And art really helps me with that so much. So I kind of come to the art without any intentions really, and I make the art, and then it shows me maybe how I'm feeling, or what it kind of shows me who I am in a way. So that's why I do art.
That is so interesting, and I think that is very important for some people to hear too, that there are so many ways why you create, why you art journal, why you do mixed media stuff. And there's not just one right way of approaching that. And this is a big part, the way how you approach it as well. And I think that's the beauty of mixed media art, or especially art journaling. So, Iris, that actually kind of leads us probably to my next question. So the theme for Creative Jumpstart 2020 this year is the artistic superpower. And so what is your artistic superpower?
Okay, when you told me that was the theme this year, I was so excited because I really love that. Like, I kind of feel like that's going to make it so that all the lessons are so different and with people's different approaches. So I was like really excited about that, like thinking about what's my superpower, because it's not like it was immediately apparent to me. So I think I have two. I have the one that I think is my superpower, and then I have the one that I know other people tell me, oh, that's the thing you did for me. So I'll do my one first. So my one is that I think that my superpower is that I let everything be allowed through art. So in art, I really find it really important that you can be free, that there can be no rules, that there's no restrictions, that there isn't any bad art, and that kind of thing. So that's kind of my artistic superpower, allowing that all to come out and to be, and also like the negative things, like emotions that people in our society tend to shy away from, that they tend to be kind of like, well, oh, just be happy, or just pretend to be happy, that kind of thing. So those kind of emotions of like more kind of grief or depression, that kind of thing, is really important to me, that there's a place for that in my art, and that there's also a place for other people to have that in their art. So facilitating that is my superpower. And now the thing that other people tell me that I do for them, which is kind of surprising, but it kind of fits as well, is that people tell me that I give them permission. Like that when they talk to me, and this has especially come up in people who have done work with me in real life, face to face, that afterwards they're like, oh, I didn't know that I was so blocked. I didn't know that I needed permission in order to just like grab the art supplies that I wanted and make the movements that I wanted. And so that's something that people have told me that I do for them.
That's pretty amazing. That is a very big superpower, actually. Empowering people. So when you think about your artistic superpowers, is there, is your non-artistic superpower similar or different?
You know how like we're always like trying to be the way our parents weren't? Like the way your parents were, and you're like, oh, I'm not gonna do that when I have kids. So what I think I suffered a lot from not feeling like my feelings were welcome, to the point where I didn't even know I had feelings, and that's kind of part of the things that I'm unpacking as an adult. So I do really feel that like the fact that my kids can come to me and not just come to me, but they can just be and have their moods and have their feelings without being told by me like, oh, it's not so bad, or look at all the things why you shouldn't be sad, or those kind of things. So allowing my kids to have the feelings that they're having, and then just helping them with them rather than trying to make them into something else. I feel like that's something that I am doing in my life that I'm really pleased that I'm doing. I'm still learning how to apply to myself. I'm much harsher with myself than I am with my kids. But like, you know, I think that's a way in which I can kind of learn with my kids.
That's a great superpower too to have, I think, in real life. I was talking with Andrea Chablot yesterday, and she, I think it's kind of funny in general about this theme, that some people really, really struggled about pinpointing what their artistic superpower is, because I think there's part of us also that is like, oh, you shouldn't like, humble brag or whatever, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And we feel like, oh, really, you want to have me talk? But I feel it's even harder for people to actually think about like their everyday life superpower. And a lot of things we just take for granted. And it was funny, yesterday Andrea said her superpower is, normal life superpower is listening. And I was like, that's also, it's so interesting to hear everyone's different thoughts about these things. And I think, allowing feelings is a big thing. To also, and it basically comes back to what you do in your art as well. You're allowing feelings in your art journaling, and you're giving people permission to play and express their feelings in their art journal. So wow, you've really come full circle in actually both of your ways.
Yeah. It's a process though. Like it's not like I'm done with it, like it's a continuous kind of, sometimes you succeed at it and then other times you don't. So
how do you deal with, it's actually, I'm asking you this question also because that's something that I have been thinking about a lot in my own artwork, and that's just the way how, it's a blessing in a way that we are so able to show our work to other people and we share it on social media. But then there are a lot of expectations out there on how you share, what you share. And then there's this kind of push and pull, and at least for me, is like, well, not everything is like awesome in my life. And I might not want to share everything, but then there's this like authenticity pressure, and you're like, well, a lot of the things that I see where people are like, I'm so authentic right now, you're like, it's not that authentic. It's still
it's like fake authentic.
Yes, yeah. Right?
I know.
How do you deal with that? Do you share a lot on social media, and how do you deal with things that are like, we all go through like really rough patches? How do you do that?
Okay, I have a lot of thoughts about this because I've thought about this a lot. Like, being authentic is actually a really important thing to me. But then when I put things online and I start writing about things, whether, like, they're always real experiences, but as soon as you start writing about an experience that you're having, is it like, are you still being authentic? Because
Right.
in a way, especially when you're putting it not on your personal Facebook just for your friends to see, but you're putting it on like a, a business Facebook or a business Instagram, you're, in a way, you are representing your brand. So
Right.
what kind of authenticity are you representing? Like, it's an interesting question that doesn't really have an answer. But I would say that when things are really bad for me, I have no desire to update. I have no desire to go like, oh, I'm really depressed. Like,
Right.
no.
Right.
I just
Right.
I just want to have nothing to do with the internet or nothing to do with art in times like that. So I don't tend to do that. But then once I kind of come out of like feeling really badly and I start thinking about things, then I might share like some of the insights that I might have gotten, or I'm then able to say like, oh, well, things were really bad. And I do share things like that as well. But only once I've got a little bit of distance from it. But I am aware that when I'm doing that it is a brand of authenticity rather than like. But I mean, that's the thing with everything in life, isn't it? It's what we're putting out there, and it's always how we want to put ourselves out there. So it's always on Instagram it's definitely filtered,
Right.
but even in real life it's filtered. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad I'm not the only one thinking about this and kind of struggling about this. Oh, we're also super authentic, and then I'm like, well, actually, no. I'm sorry to break it, right? But like, like, I don't know. It's like, even when people are like posting often like messy work areas, and you're like, well, it's still a staged photo.
Exactly.
So I don't know. It's an interesting thing, and I've been thinking about it a lot. Thank you for being so honest about it. So,
but I mean, it is to me, as part of what I do, it is important actually to talk about when things are crap and stuff. And I kind of feel like I don't have to talk about it very much because it's so evident in my work. Like, it's not like my work isn't like happy. It's really about like expressing those things that are not so happy. So don't really have to say anything about it. But because I like to give myself permission to express those things and give other people permission to express those things, I do kind of sometimes, when I'm able to, try to make a point of the fact that I struggle. I don't find things easy. Sometimes I am completely blocked, artistically, that it isn't just, like, oh, la la la, life is easy for me, art is easy for me, because it's not. And I find it really important to share those things because I think that that's what I needed when I was just starting.
Yeah, I think it comes down to this. I had this discussion, not a discussion, but a nice like email exchange with a student, and she took a class, and she was saying that it's really hard for her to see other people posting artwork, and she always compares herself to other people, right? And part of that is, of course, comparison is the thief of joy. But if we as artists only put out like, especially art journalists, like happy go golly, beautiful pages, then it is hard to like say, hey, yeah, you can also make something that maybe in the eye of someone else is really ugly, but it doesn't matter because in that moment, that's what you were feeling and that's what you wanted to express, right? So, and well, it depends on if you want to share the journaling too, which is why I don't journal a lot, actually. Do you journal a lot? Do you write a lot besides titles?
No, I don't. I mean, I sometimes, what I'll do is in like first layers, I might scribble write, and it will have meaning to me, or I'll just be writing something, but I don't want it to be read. So that's why I do the scribbling, and it's kind of like journaling, but I'm not very much into writing about myself, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. That's not really what I do. I find it frustrating and limiting, whereas I find art journaling as a whole, with the mixed media and like getting messy and the scratching or whatever, I find that is fulfilling in a way that I find regular journaling isn't. So that's
and you also process, because you're,
yeah.
at least I feel like I'm thinking, of course, about the things that go through my mind,
Yes.
right? So you're kind of processing internally while you're like putting it up. It's a
exactly.
weird,
And also for me, art journaling is a very subconscious process. So I always find that if I'm writing, there is a conscious translation that needs to take place in order to translate things to actual words that you can put on a paper. So for me, actually just writing down maybe a word that just comes up in me rather than trying to formulate sentences is more natural. And then also just like, oh, this is the color I want to use. It's a way of kind of accessing my subconscious in a way that I don't feel like I am able to through words.
Right. That's very interesting. I mean, what is your tip for students to open up when they create?
It's really difficult, I think, because it's not like I would love to have like a one-stop solution kind of like, oh, this is what you do, like you put on this music or you burn this candle or like you take this many deep breaths. I don't know. It's just for me it's been a journey of getting there, and sometimes I sit down and I'm able to do it, and sometimes I sit down and I'm not. So sometimes I will be like, oh, I'm going to listen to a meditation, or I'm going to like close my eyes and take some deep breaths. And then I do it. I'm like, oh, this is so good. I should do this every time. And then I completely forget to do it all the other time. So, but it's more, I think, I mean, it's going to be a bit, I mean, you ask me a question and I'm going to give you like a really vague non-answer. But it's about like, it's about allowing yourself, really. It's about sitting down and allowing yourself. And that is one of the things that I've learned over the years. It's that I noticed that when I was creating, I was talking myself out of things all the time. And at first, I didn't even notice it. I didn't notice that I was doing it, but I was doing it pretty much every minute. And then I thought, well, if I'm doing this every minute at my art desk, I must be doing this every minute in my real life, just filtering myself, just not saying what I really want to say, not going with that first impulse. And I mean, obviously we're adults, like it's important that we've learned not to go with our first impulses. But then if you do that without questioning it, then you kind of become a sort of robot, like a this is expected of me robot, instead of kind of going like, okay, well, I'm choosing not to like swear at the really annoying person on the phone, but you're aware of the fact that, anyway, so what I noticed was that when I was doing art, I would think, oh, I want to do red there, and then I'd go like, no, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I want to make one eye bigger than the other eye. No, you can't make one eye bigger than the other eye. That's not done. So I started noticing whenever I tried to talk myself out of things, and they were usually things I wanted to do that were just not logical, Mr. Spock. So and so now I tend to do those things. So I'm like, oh, I want to do this with the really big brush, or I want to do this with this weird color that doesn't go in this color scheme, and then I just do it. So.
Right. Yeah, I think part of it is that I think our society is like very, very judgmental, and so are we, because we're part of that society. But then we also, we know that, and that's why we're prejudging ourselves in the eye of the others, right? And so that's
exactly.
so horrible. Like you're like, well, I mean, and what's the worst thing that can happen? Like I had, especially with art, I think it's sometimes funny that I have, I have some paintings in the living room. I remember actually good friends of ours came and they were like, I really like that painting, but why did you have to put some like white drops all over the painting? And I was like, because I felt like that. But then all the time afterwards, when I was like, playing in my art journal or painting, and I did something with my brush and flicking, I was thinking about what they were saying. I was like, but who cares? Right? You're like, oh, maybe. So, and then you're like, who cares? Like, if I feel like I want to do freaking drops everywhere, I will do that. Right? So, it's an interesting thing that we are like prejudging with our inner voice, like kind of like setting up what could happen to when we show it to the world or whatever, right? Yeah, it's a very it's a very hard thing actually when you do that. And I think I've always feel that it's also part of the culture. I don't know. I mean, we are very close neighbors, the Dutch people and the German. So,
Yes.
I mean, we are neighbors. So, but I feel like, especially in Germany, there's a lot of, things about how you behave, how you talk, how you, put yourself out there, how you close, right?
Yeah. Like what is done and what is not done.
Exactly. There's so many unspoken rules out there, like how loud you are, and it's actually sometimes freeing. I feel, at least like in the U.S., when you're like, well, they talk loud. Sorry, Americans, you do. And it's like, it's refreshing sometimes. You're like, oh my God, yeah.
They don't actually talk loud, by the way. It's to do with your voice box.
Oh, really?
Larynx, yeah. It's basically American people tend to talk with a high larynx, and that's why that's why the voices sound loud.
Don't tell that my husband. I think he's really loud. But yeah, I think that's it's like I grew up in this culture, and also at home, that there were a lot of things that you're not supposed to say, to do, and put yourself together, and that's really hard. You always think about how people are judging you, and tough being, man.
Yeah, and it's also like, because things are part of your culture and they're part of your upbringing. And obviously, the upbringing that you had is informed by the culture that you grew up in and that your parents grew up in. You often are driven by things that you don't even know. Like, so yeah, unpacking that,
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's a good thing to break in some ways, definitely. And I think it's interesting that you and I are both living in a different country, and probably looking at some of these also as a cultural thing.
Yeah.
So. On your website, you have a great article, which is called "Am I an Artist?"
Mm-hmm.
What prompted you to put this out there? And is that something that you still struggle with sometimes? To tell our listeners real quick what this article is about.
So it was an article that I wrote because I think it was a question that I was struggling with. Like, am I an artist? Like, what needs to happen before I'm allowed to call myself an artist? And I wrote this article a few years ago, actually, when this was a much more pressing question in my mind. Mm-hmm. Like, these days, it's not so much a pressing question in my mind, but back then it was. And I started pondering, like, what are these restrictions that we put in place, saying like, oh, well, that's an artist, but this is not an artist. And, then people say things like, oh, don't quit your day job, like those kind of things that really, like, nobody's ever said that to me, luckily, but like I know people who've had that said to them.
Yeah.
Like, in actuality, and I'm like what gets into people? But in any case, like, those are the things that kind of contribute to that feeling of like, I'm not allowed to call myself an artist. And as I was thinking about it, and like kind of going through like, what do you say to kids, and like, how do you treat kids, and what's the difference between someone who we perceive to be an artist and someone who we don't perceive to be an artist? Like, so we would say that a hobbyist is not an artist, but someone who sells their work is an artist. This is not my opinion. This is kind of more like how I see things being seen in the world.
Right.
Then, like, why is what I was asking myself, really. And I kind of came to the conclusion that, you're an artist if you make art, and you make art if you do something creative. You don't question whether you're a mother. You're just automatically a mother if you're vaguely female and you have children, whether they are your own biological children or not. Like, it's a role and a title that like a lot of people can claim and do claim, and don't really feel any judgment or shame about claiming. Or if you're a doctor, let's say you've studied to be a doctor, you're a doctor. Done.
Right.
It doesn't matter what type of doctor you are. It's like it's just like, it's very clear cut. Whereas with the artist thing, it's all of a sudden it's like, oh well, Auntie blah 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 has an opinion about this, and now all of a sudden that should influence whether I'm an artist or not. So it's just very curious. And then I just kind of came to the conclusion that, you can call yourself an artist. I give you permission to call yourself an artist, because if you make art, if you scribble things on pieces of paper, then you're an artist.
Yeah, I think this is that's where I feel like we have a lot in common again, because I had these feelings before too. And to come shortly back to that cultural thing, I every time I say in Germany I'm an artist, people ask me two different questions. One is when they don't know me. One is which university did you study art? And the other one is like, are there any galleries that you have your art being shown? And that, by the way, I've never been asked in the States, which is, I think, part of it cultural here is you don't have to basically study what you do. I think Europe gets a little bit more lax with that, but basically it used to be in my generation and the generations before, whatever you set out in a very early stage of your life to do as your profession, you would do that till the end of your life.
Yes.
And so you can't be an artist if you didn't study art, right? So that's so interesting about that. And so I struggled with that question too. And I used to even say I have some friends that have been in museums and galleries and are very, very successful artists. I mean, they're still not rich, but I mean, and successful of, being around. And I would say, oh, my friend who is a real artist.
Oh, yeah.
And actually one of my real artist friends, Adam, he at one time said, well, you are a real artist too. I said, well, yeah, yeah. And he was like, well, but if you feel what you're doing is art, then you're an artist. Like, don't let other people tell you if it's art, and don't have these like things defined by like money success, which is like a thing that oftentimes plays in that too, right? Like showing art somewhere that's official, or selling a lot of artwork. Do you actually sell artwork? Was that like a thing that you had in your mind when you were thinking about, am I an artist or not?
I have sold some art, but it's never been the focus of what I do. I want to focus on it more.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really about selling it. It's more about like getting the recognition
Mm-hmm.
for it. And recently I had a little exhibition and I saw people looking at my art, and the way I felt when I saw people looking at my art, and obviously online I don't see people looking at my art, but in real life seeing people looking at my art, I was so, I don't know the word for the feeling, but I was like, I want more of that. I want people to really look at my art, so that was something that I want to do. Sorry, I've forgotten your question. Do I sell my art? Yeah, no, but it doesn't really come into it didn't come into the answering of the question, but it did come into the judgments and the reason that people think like, oh, in order to call yourself an artist, you need to have sold your art, which is obviously not true, but it is something that we tend to think.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, it's this weird thing about you're either a starving artist that you should be, and you shouldn't be at all striving to make any money, which you're like, really? And the other one is, well, you can't be a good artist if you haven't sold anything. It's like, oh, thank you.
I know. Interesting dichotomy, right?
It's so funny. So, who are your personal favorite artists, and why? Are there like, and what kind of genre is it what you look into?
Okay, so like a historical artist that I like, Egon Schiele.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really love his work because it's so full of feeling. Like, you go and see his paintings in real life and I just want to cry. Like, it's just, and also because he was so young and he died so young, and like his life was kind of like, or his death was tragic, but his life, like, he seems like he was quite a happy person. He wasn't an unhappy person. Right. He was just someone that it came across to me. He was someone who felt very deeply, and I find that fascinating to see what he was able to paint at such a young age. Yes. What he was able to grasp at such a young age. So I love his work. And then I like some people like just kind of contemporary artists, but like in this kind of mixed media scene.
Right.
So I really like Marieke Blokland's work. I think she's also teaching on Creative Jumpstart. Yes. So I love her work. Like her slightly more raw and dark work is like I could just like look at that forever and ever. It's like all textured and lovely. And then someone who I follow on Instagram, whose name I don't even know. I just know their Instagram name. I think it's Flying Pangolins or something. It's someone who does like really like raw feminine work with like quite vampiric or like with demon kind of horns and stuff. And I love it. I could just like I would like to own a piece by her because yeah, it just makes me feel like I just want to eat those paintings.
I was just thinking that's very interesting, and I love Schiele too. I do actually follow. There's I think an Instagram account of a gallery, or no, it's a museum that is dedicated to him and had most of his artwork. I have to send you the link on Instagram.
Okay,
And they post.
Is it the Leopold Museum?
Yes, of course.
Yes, I've been there.
Yeah,
it was
great. Oh,
you
were. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like a whole museum with almost exclusively Schiele, because the guy, Leopold, he was like obsessed with his work and tried to collect all of it and then put it in a museum. I think that was the story. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. And I love, when it comes up in the feed, they don't post every day.
Yeah, I want to follow that account. Yes, please send it to me.
Yeah, I will. So yeah, if you also are interested in Schiele, it is probably for some an acquired taste, but it's always good to open yourself up to other things, I feel, and check it out. But I love how he has sometimes these like very what did you say, distorted figures, and there's this expression of emotions in there that's like, I think not many people could do it that way. It's pretty amazing. So very cool. And the other person, if you find it, send it to me so we can put it in there and have some people check it out too. I'm always interested in what people are, getting their inspiration from too. That was super cool, Iris. I love talking to you. One day I hope I will see you in person.
Yeah. I want to just like step into your studio because it just looks so inviting.
Yeah, it's my new home, so I'm very happy about it as well. It has not as much beautiful light as you have in your studio because I'm on the ground floor. So
all this light is artificial. It's like it's pitch black outside right now. So.
Oh, that's true. It's later in the day. That's true.
Yeah.
Good job. It does really look like the sun is floating into your room. See, so much about authenticity again.
Yeah, exactly. Look at my sun-soaked face. Yeah, no, it's three lamps cranked all the way up to high.
So I want you to Iris, sign up for Creative Jumpstart. Use Iris' link that is under her postings, and she will appreciate that. But how can people find you, Iris? Where are you on social media?
Okay, so the best place to catch up with me is on Instagram. That's where I post all of my new work, and it's where I'm most active. I'm quite addicted to Instagram. And I'm at iris.impressions.art on Instagram. And you can find me on the same Iris Impressions Art on Facebook as well. I'm also on Twitter, but I'm not a big Twitter person. So Facebook or Instagram is where you can see all my art.
Yeah, follow her there. She does also a lot of stories, and it's interesting to go through her stories as well. And sign up. You're in for a great. I can say that probably like a good session of a nice art journaling page. So maybe we post a sneak, or maybe Iris does that.
Yeah, I have a sneak peek on my Instagram somewhere. I think I already posted it. So yeah, Yeah.
Check it out and sign up. Thank you so much, Iris. Well, that was wonderful. Have a great evening.
Really nice of you
And
too.
talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.